Hey, what's up, and welcome back to another episode of the Relationship Schools podcast. I'm your host, Jayson Gaddis, and I'm grateful to get this opportunity to help you with your relational life. Okay, this podcast, of course, is all about relationships, family, friends, and intimate partnerships, business relationships, etc. And you'll notice that we have couples on here. We have my wife, we have me. Sometimes the sessions are short, sometimes they're long. There's interviews with leading experts all over the world in mind and health, neuroscience. And I think this has been an awesome journey. And I'm glad you're with me, whether you're new or returning. I want to thank everybody for leaving reviews. Here's one from Laura. So much value here. This podcast has truly been life-changing and is having a massive impact on how I show up for my relationships with others and also my relationship with myself. Jayson has a spirit of kindness and loving acceptance that makes it okay to break down and own your shit, because he then takes you by the hand and creates a place where you can be safe to repair and rebuild in ways that will serve you better. He's the friend we all need. Thanks, Laura. That's super sweet of you. So Laura, thanks. Sounds like Laura's been listening for a while. And if you've gotten value here, what you can do is just say thank you by leaving us a review. 300 plus episodes, totally free. If you would take a couple minutes of your time and leave us a 5-star written review, that would be amazing. That way we can reach more people. Cool? Thanks. All right, in this episode, my wife and I are talking about attachment. Primarily, we zero in on how to deal with attachment styles, differences in the styles. Well, we're not going to get into the drill down into the styles specifically. This is the working assumption here is that you already know what attachment means. And if you don't, no problem. We have a lot of episodes on that. And I would recommend listening to the one I interviewed Diane Poole-Heller. That's a good one on the 4 attachment styles. And Ellen and I have a few in here. But this one is really answering a few of your questions from Instagram. And I wanted to thank you, people, for taking the time to ask Ellen and I questions way back in May. I just had this written down and I blew it off. And then I found it the other day and I was like, oh, I want to answer these questions. So anyway, our delay here, but I think these questions are always relevant to all of us. So a bunch of you responded to these questions about attachment. And the basic question I asked was, what do you want to most learn about attachment from my wife and I? Comment below. So if you're not following me on Instagram, please do that at Jayson Gaddis, Jayson Gaddis, Gaddis. That's on Instagram. I'm pretty active there now. I go through phases, but right now I'm in a very active phase, and I would love your questions and comments on there, and I'll reply to you, okay? Awesome. So we're going to dive in. There's about 4 or 5 questions here. There's so many more you guys had, and we couldn't get to all of them, but we'll do another one, and we're going to specifically follow up with one on empathy. So check it out. Here's a few tips around your attachment styles, and you're in a relationship with someone that's different from you. What do you do around attachment? And stay tuned to the end for your action step, and let's do this. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Relationship Schools podcast. I'm your host, Jayson Gaddis, and I'm here with my lovely wife,
Ellen Boeder.
Yes, Ellen Boeder. Thank you. Hi. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to answer some attachment questions.
Yes.
That we've been meaning to get to. Mm-hmm. So thanks, Instagram listeners, for all your amazing questions. We're going to start with the therapeutic sound warrior. I would like to learn how to heal the part of me that pushes my partner away when they finally are present and show up in relationship. I am the anxious partner, generally picking avoidant men, my husband. And now he is showing up, and I feel the self-sabotaging and strong desire to run now. At my core, I guess I'm feeling unworthy of love. Nothing to fix anymore, so now what? It's extremely unconscious, and I finally see this pattern has played out my entire life in romantic partnerships. I don't want to destroy my marriage with this attachment style.
Wow.
That's cool.
You have a lot of insight. I think you have a lot of insight already. Just being able to track that pattern and that response in you, I feel like that's a huge step, don't you think?
Yeah,
That just
amazing.
I see what's happening, I see what I do.
Yeah.
when you do that, and then I do this, like when you can see the sequence, and that's an enormously valuable chunk of work you've already done, I think.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge you also for, the work you've done. And this is, I just want to say that this is normal. Normal to the degree that, like, this just happens with people and their attachment styles. They're frustrated that someone's distant, and then the person finally shows up, and then they're like, oh shit.
Right, like I haven't dealt with this.
And then they kind of run the other direction. So that part I just want to say is common.
Yeah, it's not like, I don't feel deeply concerned about you.
Not at all.
But I do understand that you're wanting to have a new response to someone showing up and being available. A response that's like reciprocal or able to tolerate that.
Yeah, where
right?
you don't run and I mean, I would say, just my 2 cents here, is if you could let him in on that, and maybe you already have, but just talking about your fear, and before we judge it or label it as maybe self-sabotaging, it's just maybe if you slow that down a little bit and say, hey, honey, I just want you to know I'm at that point in a relationship where I get really scared, and now I become the distant person. I become the person who withdraws. And I know it was the very thing I was kind of complaining or frustrated with you about, and now I'm sort of doing that, and this is so scary for me. It's so vulnerable for me. I really don't know what to do, but I want to keep it on the table to talk about openly here.
Right. Well, I think also, I like what you're saying, and also like in the moment, like I feel scared right now. I feel like I want to leave right now. I feel like I want to do something to have you go away again, because that.
Right.
I feel like I know how to deal with that, but I don't know how to deal with this. Like, I think the more you can talk about it right as it's happening, and like you said, slow down and include your partner in that. And because at that point, you guys together have choices. Like, okay, does this feel like enough? Like you could just dose it down. You don't have to take him and his presence in for the next 3 days. You could do it for 3 more minutes instead, or something, and you guys could collaborate around how to meet each other there, because he may have I'm sure has some whole other response. I'm guessing it's a he. I guess I don't know if this person said that, but whoever it is, they're probably having their own reaction to whatever's starting to happen for you. So it's just to make room for that, so you guys can navigate that with a little more agency. But to go slow there, to not imprison yourselves in that place, and like you have to do it a certain way, but to be gentle and help each other stay aware. Yeah,
the way to change a pattern, I think, these kind of attachment patterns is, like Ellen's saying, in the moment. You speak it in the moment every time it's happening. And you call out, or you notice what you're doing and what you kind of want to do. And you're just starting to take these little baby steps towards changing the pattern. Yeah, and him, or your partner, just by being, I'm picturing it a certain way, obviously. But she said husband. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe that's where it's coming from. He could also, you could be coaching him, or, collaborating with him around what can he do in those moments that just helps. That's helpful, versus making it worse or something too. So cool. I'm sure that's what he would like to do. So thanks for your question, Therapeutic Sound Warrior. All right, Andrew's got one here. How to work together with opposite attachment styles? That's not unusual. That's really common, that people who have different attachment styles will partner up. And those styles can evolve over time. So you might sort of start out in one pattern and end up in another 10 years later. And so what's the question? How to work together when they're opposite? Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that are different about us beyond attachment styles. Like, I just think, God, I'm just dealing with a whole nother person all the time, who not only has a different attachment style, perhaps, which is actually good, I think, to not be exactly the same there, because you can be more complementary at times. but there's also so many other things that are different. It's never you're just working with someone's attachment style, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, what are ways to connect when we feel like we're dealing with someone really different, which is all the time.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you can normalize it again and say, yeah, this is kind of the deal. This is our relationship. I'm going to attract my opposite, whether it's attachment style or values or whatever. I think that's helpful for us so that we can love bigger and learn how to hold more as human beings. So just know that this is okay, normal. This is the program an intimate partnership.
Yeah.
And if you're in the fantasy, I'm not sure you are, but your question might be coming from some fantasy place where we're supposed to be the same or we're supposed to be aligned with everything. And that's just not my experience. That hardly ever happens. That would be really boring. And I don't think those relationships exist, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And maybe this person's speaking to like the way the different attachment styles show up might be that under stress, one person wants to be alone and one person wants to be together.
Yeah.
And that can be hard to navigate because one person feels like they need space, the other person feels like they need to talk and connect and like work it out right then. And so that can be, you have to get creative with each other around how we're going to find some way that works for both of us. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe, there's a lot of ways to do this, but it's so much about communicating that you care about how the other person feels. Yes, I recognize you want to connect right now. I don't feel ready for that. I feel like I need space. Would it be okay? Would it work for you? Could I take 10 minutes and then come back? How does that time frame sound? Or, or the person who wants to connect, well, I really want to talk this out with you right now and I see that you're not ready. Why don't you take a little time, do this, let's come back to this evening. There's ways to, we are not always going to get things exactly the way we want them, but if we can care about the other person getting what they want, if I really care about you getting through this, I care about me getting through this, if I can do all of that, then we can usually find things that work for both of us.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to like reinvent all the time. You can, once you know each other well, it's like, oh yeah, you probably need space right now, but I don't want you to be gone for 3 hours.
Or all weekend.
Or whatever. I want to connect in the next 30 minutes or hour or something.
Yeah, so both parties have to push themselves a little bit. You have to challenge yourself to do the thing that's not natural for you and that's a little harder. And you've drawn in a partner who's inviting you to increase your capacity to communicate and to be in connection more of the time, because maybe you're more of the distant person. And the other person is inviting the distant person, did I just say that? Into communication?
Yeah.
And the opposite. What's the opposite?
Yeah, the opposite would be the person who's like, I need to connect and talk this out, is learning how to be with their anxiety, discomfort, and and continue to explore ways to take care of themselves that aren't about like the content and the talking and the kind of all of that immediately. So
your question is like a good one for your partner. How do we work with the fact that you want more space and I want more closeness? How do we do that? And I don't know. Gosh, let's scratch our heads here.
Yeah, what would work?
And be a team. Like, how do we do this without it being really problematic? Because the moment you start making their way a big problem, you're just creating more conflict.
Yeah.
If we kind of relax going, oh, right, this is just how people are wired, how are we going to get creative about how do we both be there for each other and stay true to ourselves? Because I don't want to abandon myself to do that for you.
Right.
Right. So it's a good question, and to me it's the ongoing question in an intimate, close relationship.
Absolutely. How
do we work with our attachment styles?
Right. How do we work with our differences?
Yeah.
It's ongoing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Andrew. Mm-hmm. Ozmonster, do you think it's possible? I love people's Instagram names.
Yeah.
I could have that wrong, but do you think it's possible for a person who is anxiously attached to be in a successful long-term relationship with someone who is avoidant? What about two people who both have anxious attachment styles? If so, how? Do they both need to be doing the work to become more secure?
Wait, can I read that?
Yeah.
That's going to help me. Oh, yeah. Do you think it's possible for a person who's anxiously attached to be in a successful long-term relationship with someone who's avoidant? Absolutely.
Totally.
You don't have to change your attachment styles. You need to learn how to work with them. That's it. really.
That's it. Like we were just saying to Andrew.
Like
right?
you're not trying to change how you attach. It's like we're gonna create a system here that is sensitive and includes both of us, and so we work with it, and then I think over time you become more secure together.
Yeah,
I think that's what
so your
happens.
last part of your question is a really important one, because here's the disclaimer. And it's very hard to move towards security as a couple if one of you doesn't want to do the work. You're sort of suggesting that. So it's not the styles that are a problem, it's the willingness or unwillingness that's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is just not interested in like evolving themselves and learning how to be considerate toward you and be fair, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be very hard, and you're going to be very frustrated and feel alone, and then you might blame yourself or them and their attachment style when it's actually the willingness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if two people both have anxious attachment styles, again, that's not a problem in and of itself. And in a way, you might be able to understand each other even better. Like, oh yeah, you deal with the same internal upset that I do, and you handle it in the same way out here in the world. And so there's a lot of room to understand each other there. That might be more straightforward. But in terms of creating something that's more secure for both of you, you said, do they both need to be doing the work to become more secure? I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think just one person can make a difference in a relationship, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Like if one person starts to change and evolve and grow, the relationship will. But I think in the end, both people really need to be on board with that for it to really evolve.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm with you, 100%. Yep.
That's just so paramount.
Totally. Okay, let's do one more.
Okay.
This was from Rachel. How can two islands bridge and become a continent and fill a team?
I like that metaphor. Like we're becoming a continent.
Yeah.
Although islands might not love that.
Right.
Like, it's a lot of merging. I think that's great. People do that together. Two islands in a relationship. Sometimes there's one person's a stronger island, I guess.
Yeah.
I love that we're using old Stan Tatkin's language here.
Yep.
And it's like so what people know. So one person might be a stronger island, so they may have just a stronger need to be on their own more, regulate on their own more. But those two people, just like anyone else, can do that. Each relationship, I think what people need to decide for themselves as a couple is like, what do we want our relationship to look like? How much intimacy do we want? How much connection? How much time together? How much do we want to do together? How much do we want to participate in each other's worlds and lives? Like, I think people get to decide how sort of deep they want to go, how that looks. And so, two couples will have two different kinds of relationships. So two islands might spend more time doing their own things, let's say, or traveling. They might like to travel alone, let's say, or something like that. And if they both feel good about that and they like that, that's not a problem. There's not like it's supposed to be a certain way. It's really, relationships have problems when one person doesn't like the way something's going. Then you have to address that, right?
Totally. So you could say it kind of doesn't matter what the style is.
Yeah.
I think what Ellen's last point there is really the issue there is something a problem that I'm doing for you?
Right.
And how are we going to navigate that now? And it could be that one of you actually does want more connection than the other person, even though you're two islands. And that's the problem. Or it could be the problem is, the space, the amount of space you take, and the lack of communication is the problem.
Right.
You're just not doing a great job of communicating that you need a little more time or space or whatever,
Yeah.
So I think, again, if things are out on the table, they can be worked through together as a team every time. But if I'm harboring something or withholding or not speaking up, then
Or thinking we should do our relationship a certain way.
Yeah, right.
Even.
Should be closer all the time.
We should do whatever. And if that's not really what you both want, then that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally. Okay, thanks, Rachel. I'm going to be that jerk. Me and my wife, this is Thunderbird. rather than my wife and I. I love your content, and I would like to know, in regards to attachment, how to get your partner to hold space for you when they seem to really struggle being empathetic.
Why? How is this person being a jerk?
I don't know. I think
Okay.
the grammar.
Oh.
Yeah, me and my wife versus my wife and I.
Oh.
I don't
worry
care,
about that.
personally. I'm not, the grammar police, we're not around. So that last part of the question, again, just is, how do you get your partner to hold space for you when they seem to really struggle with being empathetic? Ellen and I are going to do a whole podcast on this one. So
We've been learning more about that ourselves. I
yeah,
think.
especially me. Empathy, what's that? That helps? Huh? What?
Maybe you want to start, because
Sure. Yeah.
I could speak to it too. How do you?
Yeah, I mean, the other partner the partner who's not very empathetic, which we're going to call me in this case, again, has to be open-minded enough and open to a little feedback or input that the other person, my wife, let's say, is missing this. Like, I could use a little more empathy, right? And I'm like, what? Like, I have to, again, be open, first of all, to that possibility that I'm not being that empathetic.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And if I'm open, then I'm willing to learn something. I think this is true with most skills here in relationship, is you got to have a willingness.
Mm-hmm.
So if your partner's willing, it's like, I think empathy can be learned no matter what you've been through.
Yeah.
There's obviously certain brain chemistry that makes it very difficult, but I feel like empathy is hardest in my marriage. It's easier elsewhere because sometimes I have my own triggers and blocks and defensiveness, and I don't want to put myself in your shoes, or I struggle to because I'm still harboring something, I'm still hurt, or
right. Well, I think that's where our relationship can sort of elicit all those memories of when that didn't go well for you to empathize or prioritize someone else's feelings, even for a few moments. And so that's what would make it harder here with me.
Totally.
That's my understanding.
Yeah. My history, in other words.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes that block to being more empathic has to do with, like, let's say I'm the one that's like, but I don't want to empathize with you, or I don't think that's good or helpful. It's usually because that it hasn't helped before, or like I'm saying for you, like it hasn't maybe gone well or served me to be more empathic to you. So like there's just a lot of reasons why we might not be willing, and I think that once people start to see how, if you lead with empathy, if I attend to your feelings first when you come to me with whatever, your stress about something else in your life, or stress about you and I, whatever it is, if I lead with care and interest and genuinely wanting to understand your feelings about that, then we can get to like what to do.
Yeah.
So much easier. Like then I can support you, or you're receptive to my advice, let's say, or whatever it is.
I've felt into what I'm going through.
Because Jayson, you feel understood and cared about, and that's where I think it's so essential that I think this is just such an important step, is that we convey empathy and communicate that and prioritize that, because it makes all the other things we're going to have to figure out so much more accessible.
Yeah.
Versus if I start just with like advice or my reaction to your feelings, or like if I'm just not willing to go there, I think that creates a lot of it sort of shuts things down.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
I think that once you see like, a little bit of empathy goes a long way, and then you're also willing to empathize with my position, whatever, if that's necessary, or when I need that, it just feels better.
Yeah,
it just makes everything easier.
Yeah, it's helping a lot in our relationship. So we're going to I think we should just do a real specific one on empathy, a podcast.
Okay.
We've talked about that.
Yeah.
So we'll do that to follow up, and go back and listen to the Sharing Impact 2.0 podcast I did, where there was one little step that Ellen's kind of highlighting here, of leading with, hey, I see what's going on in your life, first in conversations. I think that will help you. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks for all the questions, Instagrammers. Sorry it took us a little while to get to those. I'll tag you guys when this comes out, so you're like, oh, finally.
Finally.
And we'll do more of that. Yeah.
Yeah, we love questions.
Yeah, especially the attachment questions. There's a lot of good ones in there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again, Instagram followers, for your questions. More to come. Here's your action step, all right? Remember, I think one of the takeaways here for me is it's the attachment styles aren't the problem. It's a willingness that's the problem. So if you have an unwilling partner, it doesn't matter what your attachment style is. You're going to have a lot of relationship problems, right? Okay. So your action step today is to reach out to a friend and let them know, hey, I listened to this podcast on how to deal with attachment style differences. And just share one takeaway that you got from this episode, all right? One takeaway. And this helps you feel known. It helps you be in relationships that are more authentic and real. They're talking about kind of a little more interesting stuff than just politics or the weather or your job. It's like, hey, I'm not saying your job's not interesting, by the way, but you know how we can stay on the surface. This takes it one step further and lets a person know what you're wrestling with inside and what you're learning about yourself. Okay, cool. Okay, and we still have spots available in our Accepted and Connected event. Go to relationshipschool.com/connected. If you want to sign up, you can bring a friend for $100. All of you people who've been on the fence for years about attending one of our events, this is the time, because you just have to stay home and you can be right on your computer and you're going to get a ton of value. We had parents last May. We were, obviously it was during COVID, and we had parents on this with kids in the background running around. We had, couples here where one couple would have to leave to go take care of food or the kids or something and come back. So this is a pretty flexible event for you. And I just say now's the time, because hopefully next year we'll be doing these kind of events in person. And there's more of a barrier, right? When you have to fly to Colorado and you're going to buy a hotel room or an Airbnb and all that. This is very straightforward for you. So go to relationshipschool.com/connected to come play with us, to learn about relationships, to learn how to listen better. And I think you're going to have a great time. Cool. Okay, thanks again, everybody, and stay connected. And if you're not connected, get connected. Talk soon. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Share one of these videos with a friend. We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships, and you are one of them, so thank you.